Today we're going to evaluate the question, should the church fat shame its members? No, seriously, but we are going to investigate this question about the relationship between ecclesiology or even theology and obesity. Or maybe we're just going to investigate how we should relate to, the question of obesity as Christians. I think that's probably a better way to put it. Let's just go with that. Okay, here we go. So the Gospel Coalition recently published an article by Lindsay Carlson titled 7 Ways to Love Christians Who Are Overweight. And I honestly don't intend to perform like a takedown of that article here, because what I found more profoundly indicative of the state of evangelical attitudes toward obesity and physical health, about which I already have opinions, but what I found more profoundly indicative of the state of evangelical attitudes towards obesity and physical health was the reaction from readers and social media people. So I'm not actually going to say anything sophisticated here, but it gives us an opportunity to comment on themes in evangelical attitudes towards the body which are awkward and impractical. And in no order and with no rationale at all, here are my thoughts. Number 1, evangelicals instinctively hate their bodies, and they shouldn't. Okay, well, maybe they should, maybe they shouldn't, right? But they shouldn't hate their bodies just because of spiritual reasons, right? So evangelicals tend to spiritualize everything and consequently practice disdain for the bodies. This is probably stems from a failure to read Paul's speech about the flesh as referring to a spiritual reality, and they misread Paul's language about the flesh as being against the flesh as Paul actually hating his body. But so when Paul says in Galatians 5:17 that the spirit and the flesh conflict with one another, he's not saying that the spirit disdains the physical, right? The term flesh is Paul's way of referring to an age that is passing away, but the body is a temple of the Holy Spirit, 1 Corinthians 6:19. So a lot of people sort of roll their eyes when you use that verse to justify working out and dieting. So, oh, that's not what Paul's talking about. But it is an appropriate application of that text, because Paul's point was that the Holy Spirit's residence in a person directed what they ought to do with their bodies. There was something particularly unfitting about a Christian visiting a prostitute. Why does he have to make the point in 1 Corinthians 6:18 that the sexually immoral person sins against his own body? Why does he have to make that point? So Paul argues, so glorify God in your body, 1 Corinthians 16:20, right? You should be healthy. This puritanical despite for the body, as if it levels up your spirituality. To hate your body, right? To show disdain for your body shows how spiritual you are. It's absolutely absurd. You know, what you do with your body is spiritual. That is Paul's point in saying that your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit. Okay, what you do with your body is spiritual. If you walk into someone's house and it's falling apart, the dishes are never done, the floors are never clean, it's never tidy, the bed is never made, the TV is always on, right? That communicates something. It tells a story. Your body tells a story. And it may not tell the whole story, but it's an essential aspect of who you are. And to neglect your body by eating garbage food and neglecting daily rigorous exercise, as most evangelicals do, is inexcusable, both at the level of common sense and at the level of glorifying God with your body. The obsession with the spiritual, and again, we are called to be spiritual people, 1 Corinthians 2. We are spiritual, and that's a beautiful, glorious thing. But that is taken as license to neglect the body. And evangelicals need to stop being so scared of vanity and self-obsession, because evangelical culture allows, I'd say even encourages, such a blindness to one's very own body that we operate with a functional Gnosticism toward one of God's greatest gifts to us, the one body we're ever going to get in this life. Number 2, fat positive Christians are militantly anti-responsibility, and I simply have to reject this attitude, because evangelicalism has bent toward the left over the past 10 years or so, and it tends to look at suffering through the lens of intersectionality politics, which can't simply take a solution-oriented approach toward a particular version of suffering. It must turn all sufferers of a certain kind into a certain kind of victim and put them in a certain class of suffering, put them in a certain category of entitlement. And the more you put them in that category of victimhood, the more you absolve them of responsibility for making changes about their suffering. And then they coddle that victim endlessly without ever offering any kind of solution. And in fact, saying that that to propose a solution is immoral. And as with all things, evangelicals have picked up 20 years late on this whole fat positive movement. So now there are so many young evangelicals, and mainly women, who suggest that their experience in church represents a certain kind of victimhood, and that there are those in the church with skinny privilege, and they lord that skinny privilege over them. And they put themselves in a cycle that they can't escape. So they complain about the persecution against them for being fat, and then they complain that they can't get anyone to marry them, and meanwhile they never shed more than a couple pounds, and you're supposed to celebrate, oh yeah, you lost 5 pounds, that you know they're going to gain back. And fat positive Christians have created a universe that is all about them, and in which you will always fail to care for them, always. And so, for example, in this recent TGC post, and I really don't mean to harp on this TGC author, because I've written for TGC and DG, and even being in the public eye, it is so exhausting to put something on the internet and get a load of trolls just coming after you. You didn't say things exactly the way I wanted it. So I'm really not meaning to troll this TGC article, but really, like I said, it just prompts an opportunity for discussion. And so in this TGC article, the author gives 7 tips for those who want to help the obese in the church. And of course, you're not allowed, according to these tips, you're not allowed to suggest that obese people should get in shape. You're not allowed to ever talk about or judge their obesity. But one piece of advice in particular shows that Christian fat positive people, they're just an extension of the very thing that keeps them obese. They don't want to take responsibility for a very hard obstacle. So the author writes, quote, "Not every Bible study meeting requires punch and cookies. Consider contributing delicious, healthy options for those trying to exercise self-control at the potluck. If you know I'm attempting to abstain from something, don't lead me to sin by telling me it doesn't matter or offering me permission to indulge," end quote. How about this? You don't have to eat free food, okay? That's a you thing. You need to take responsibility for that. That's not other people's fault. That's not the church's fault. That's a you thing, straight up. It is not their fault. If there's cookies at the potluck, you shouldn't eat them. If you're trying to lose weight, that's on you. You're going to drive by a Dunkin' Donuts on the way home. That's not Dunkin' Donuts' fault, okay? That's the one. It's the only way to get healthier. You have to take responsibility. Don't rely on other people to change. Don't wait for culture to stop judging you. Don't wait for culture to become healthier for you to become healthier, okay? It will never stop. The culture will never stop judging you and pushing unhealthy options toward you at the same time, okay? There will always be an abundance of free, unhealthy food at church and even in the world, okay? You go to the gym, you go to Planet Fitness, and they have, a pizza party and a donut party. Why do you think that is? They want to keep you there. People will always push free food in your face, and in order to lose a significant amount of weight, you have to learn the skill of saying no to free food. And even cheap food, right? You drive by a McDonald's, get 3 McDoubles for $2. Don't do it. You're like, well, I have to eat it. It's basically immoral not to buy 3 McDoubles for $2, right? Wrong. There will always be an abundance of free, unhealthy food in the world, and especially at church. Assume that the world is malicious and wants to hurt you and wants to keep you obese, okay? Stop trying to create a universe in which you are coddled. You got to lace up, download the MyPlate app, count your calories, lose the weight, become healthy. It's very hard, but it's actually not very complicated. Number 3. Being in shape gives you a longer and better life, and everybody should want that, okay? You shouldn't want to be overweight, and I've outlined the benefits of being in shape elsewhere, but I shouldn't need to, okay? It's common sense. Being strong and lean will lead to a longer, healthier, more enjoyable life than if you're overweight. And if you become strong and lean, you will be more comfortable. Your joints will feel better. You will have fewer back problems. Your risk of heart disease will be less. Your psychological well-being will be better. People will generally be more attracted to you, which means you will be more successful in the dating pool. Life gets better when you're in shape. Life gets worse when you get more obese. And if you are stronger and healthier, life will be noticeably and measurably better and longer. Whether or not you are strong and lean is dependent on your choice, yours alone. It's not a reflection of your circumstances. It's a reflection of your chosen reaction to your circumstances. Number 4, health is actually more about strength and body fat percentage than body fat per se. So let me explain that. So fat positive researchers, and it's really a terrible science and a terrible discipline, but fat positive researchers commonly cite statistics that say being overweight is actually healthier than being underweight, and that being underweight is predictive of earlier mortality and lower quality of life. And that's actually true. I agree 100%. These statistics absolutely bear that out. Why are these statistics misleading? The problem with fat positive research is that it insists on speaking about health in terms of weight alone. You should rather talk about health as a multivariated equation involving muscle mass and body fat percentage. And one thing that obese people have on their side in terms of health, especially if they've been obese their whole lives, is that they probably have they have great leg strength, which is the biggest muscle group in the body. So they have much more metabolically active tissue and likely also a stronger, more dense musculoskeletal system than an underweight person. But they're also going to have a weaker heart and lungs, or their heart and lungs are going to be more at risk for disease. So you should be as strong and lean as possible within reason. People who compete in bodybuilding know that getting your physique stage ready is a miserable process, and you don't want to try to keep your body in that super lean process. There are reasonable boundaries to muscle strength and leanness gains that you can get, but you should be aiming to achieve that 90 to 95% mark of your potential for strength and leanness. You should be aiming toward that. You shouldn't just want to lose fat. That is, unless you're obese, that's a good immediate goal. You should absolutely want to lose fat if that's your situation. But if you're obese, you probably have a lot of strength, you probably have a lot of muscle mass, but you still have a poor quality of life and face bad health risks. And you could, through a very simple process, remove those aspects of your life through fat loss. So don't romanticize obesity by accepting our culture's script of self-love. Love yourself by losing fat, and don't compare yourself to another unhealthy group, underweight people, just to justify staying fat. It's bad science, it's a false dichotomy. It's the best gift you could give yourself and your spouse and your children, to be as strong and lean as possible. Number 5, it's good to be fat phobic. We should not want to be obese. There was a season when my sister was studying body image issues in her counseling degree, and she suggested that my desire to get stronger and leaner was a function of a psychiatric disorder of body dysmorphia. And listen, I love my sister. We have fun conversations about this issue, but she was simply wrong. First of all, she's not a psychiatrist. Second of all, in order for something to be a disorder, it must actually impede your enjoyment of life. That's part of the criteria. But that's actually part of the criteria for setting criteria for the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, which is now in its 5th edition, published by the American Psychiatric Association. Being stronger and leaner made my life better, and it will make your life better too. That's a universal fact. There's this myth that if you get in shape out of a desire to overcome body hatred, well, you're only reinforcing your self-hatred. You'll never actually be happy. It's an internal rat race, so you might as well not even try. It's false. It's a lie. I gained about 60 pounds of fat in one year of my life, 2015, I think. And I hated my body. It was terrible. It was uncomfortable. I felt the fat spilling over different, in my seatbelt. And it was just very uncomfortable. My clothes weren't, fitting, that kind of thing. I wasn't able to run as fast. I didn't feel as good. And when I learned the principles of fat loss and strength gain, I lost that fat and more in 3 to 4 months and got down to like 6% body fat. It was shredded, right? And I'm probably at 10 or 11% body fat right now, but I've maintained a healthy balance. I've loved my body ever since. I love it. It's a lie that if you lose fat because you don't like where you're at, that you're always going to hate your body. That's not true. Number 6, people should assume that obese people don't want to be obese. It's a good assumption. Obese people often say, well, they don't want to be skinny. They're happy being fat. It's a lie. And it's probably a lie and that they're telling themselves. They're not necessarily maliciously lying, but they're trying to create a world in which they can remain where they are, because facing obesity is very hard. It's probably something that they have to convince themselves of, that they want to be obese, and that's why they're obese, just to get through the day. And listen, I get that. It sucks to look at the journey ahead of you and feel just crushed by like a year of work or 2 years of hard, grueling work just to look the way that other people normally look. And the first step to overcoming that crushing burden, which you can overcome, is just by looking in the mirror and stepping on the scale. And this might be the part of the journey that actually sucks the most. But if you can muster the bravery to look in the mirror and step on the scale, you can muster what it takes to take the necessary steps to lose fat. Nobody wants to be obese. It's simply not true. If an obese person could snap their fingers and look like a model, he would. 7, concern about obesity. So if my concern about somebody else's obesity, okay, it is compassion and not judgment. I am scared of being fat. I don't like looking in the mirror and being fat. That's good. It's based on good reason and good values. I want to live longer and I want to live a healthier life. When I see myself getting fatter, I get scared. When I see someone who's obese, I am scared for them. It fuels my desire to get in shape. It fuels my discipline. If you don't have that fear, you're missing an edge. More than that, the desire not to be fat represents a legitimate value. Good people want other people to enjoy their lives. The desire for obese people to overcome their obesity is not misanthropic. It is not hateful. It is philanthropic. It is a good, people-loving, beautiful thing to want a six-pack and to, well, depending on you're a man or a woman, right? For women, having a six-pack may represent some level of unhealth, but it is a good, people-loving, beautiful thing, especially not to want to be obese, but to achieve your optimal health, to achieve the apex of the vortex of your health, as James Franco might say, right? Number 8, your thyroid probably is not the reason you're fat. So almost every single obese person I know tells me that they have a thyroid problem and that's why they're fat. Almost every single one. And obesity has skyrocketed in our country from about 10% of the American population to about 40%. Extreme obesity has gone up from 1% of the American population to 10%. More than that. Check this out. Rates of obesity among children rose dramatically from less than 5% to nearly 20% of children ages 6 to 11. Either we have a thyroid malfunction crisis on our hands that's surged, or our American lifestyle choices are finally catching up with us. And for many obese people, conceiving that their body is a reflection of their dietary and exercise choices is nearly impossible. And I remember hearing a trainer tell me the story once. This trainer was in very good shape, and he said that he was sitting in a restaurant and a man came up to him, and this trainer was in very good shape. A man sat next to him at the restaurant, and this man was very obese, close to 400 pounds. And he just looked over at my friend and he said, you know, he was eating this fries and burger and this huge, huge meal, and he just looked over at him and he said, "Hey man, can you help me? Like, what do I have to do? Can you please help me?" And my friend said to him, "Listen, you just, start by, when you're sitting down, just stand up and try walking in place just for a minute. Start there, okay? Start there. It will create momentum. That can be the tip. That can be the first domino that knocks a whole realm of things down. You don't have to go crazy CrossFit 3 hours a day to get in shape. You don't need to do that. You can start small. You can build a habit. You can work on that, okay? You don't have to conform yourself to the ridiculous commodification, this marketing ideal of health and exercise and fitness. You can get there eventually, but to get significant gains in health and fat loss and all that stuff, you can start small and build a habit and build a little bit of a crack in your bad habits and work that crack until it becomes bigger and bigger and bigger and build that into a bigger habit of health and fitness. You can do it, okay? Number 9, fat shaming isn't always bullying. It really, really hurts to be told the truth. It will, especially when that truth is painful, and it will never feel good. From the perspective of the obese person, it can really hurt to be told you're on a bad path. You need to change. They've probably had experiences where people have abused their ability to call them out on their obesity. And there is such a thing as fat shaming, which is bullying. But there is a sense in which pointing out someone's obesity is pointing out someone's shame. In Eden, Adam tried to avoid God by hiding his body from him because he felt ashamed. And fat people, they never want to feel the discomfort of discussing their body because they essentially have to put their bodies on display. And nobody wants to feel uncomfortable. And it's right for them only to want to do that in the context of someone who genuinely wants their good, who has no malice or ego or self-righteousness at all, doesn't want to lord it over them. They're right to want that. They are right to be suspicious that a bully lurks behind every comment. But genuine friends who have credibility, both relationally and physically, take the opportunity to have a sober, results-oriented conversation with an obese person about their weight. This is not bullying, even if it is to unveil the shame of obesity. 10. Pastors often don't have the credibility to fat shame or to, I know this sounds bad. What I mean by this is just talking about obesity, which can be and feel like a shameful thing. Most pastors are fat. Many pastors are obese. And this is a double shame. Okay, pastors are people too, and in that sense, shouldn't we just be gracious and accept pastors as they are? Well, that raises an interesting question. How much self-compromise are we willing to accept from a leader in the church, from an ordained pastor? Is it fitting for a pastor to have $100,000 in credit card debt and continuing to live outside of his means, teaching a class in church on stewardship? Is it fitting for a pastor to preach on love and charity when he has regular outbursts of anger? No, it isn't. This is why it's a double shame for pastors to be obese. If a pastor is obese, this means he can't credibly preach or counsel on obesity. If a pastor is obese, it means the church won't have a leader An ordained leader who can hold the line, who can maintain the standard for the congregation and credibly call the church to that higher standard. This is why Paul gives higher standards for elders in Titus 1, 5-9 and 1 Timothy 3, 1-7, right? Navy SEALs need to be a higher caliber person than the average person because of the duties that they need to carry out well. And likewise, pastors need to be able to act with certain moral integrity and consistency in order to credibly and legitimately execute their duty to exhort their people. So, pastors should have the ability to address the harmful epidemic of obesity that's literally killing people, that plagues Christian churches and is perpetuated by a culture of terribly unhealthy eating habits in the church, which the church certainly does perpetuate. Again, it's on each individual who puts that cookie in their mouth, but the church is certainly complicit in perpetuating that culture. And probably the primary way that the church is responsible in perpetuating that culture. Listen, you can have cookies at the potluck. That's no big deal, right? But the pastor can't lead by example, and he can't even talk about it, because if he would talk about it, he wouldn't have the credibility to do so. The pastor cannot lead his people in this way because people wouldn't take them seriously. If the church is to become physically healthier, pastors must become physically healthier. And their failure to do so is not only a failure of their own bodies and their own families, which it certainly is, it's a failure of the church. It's a failure toward the church. 11. Skinny people often don't understand how hard it is to lose weight. Skinny people often critique fat people for being fat. But they should recognize, as we've already said, that being underweight can cause equally detrimental health issues down the road. As a skinny person, you may not have heart problems, but you will always have low muscle mass and weak bones, which means your immune system will be much weaker than the average obese person. While the obese are susceptible to endogenous disease, which is diseases happening within them, skinny people are susceptible to exogenous disease because their low muscle mass will have the inability, they have less metabolically active tissue, and therefore their immune system will be weaker. They won't be able to fight off diseases as well. The solution to this isn't to, rest in the happy middle. Well, everybody should just be skinny fat. No, that's a false dichotomy. The ideal is to ascend both of those weak positions, is for both groups to become strong and lean simultaneously. And this isn't, again, a middle ground, but it's a higher ground. 12. You can't make someone want to get in shape. They will make excuses forever. So people often have to hit rock bottom before they discover that they can actually change. And you can't make people change. You just can't do it. They have to hit a wall of desperation and despair in order to turn things around. People will make excuses forever. And if obese people are bullied about their obesity, they will likely turn to the very means which brought them to this place even further just to cope with the bullying. So that's why bullying is bad. Bullying obese people about their obesity is bad. It doesn't help them. But listen, I've been a trainer for 2 years, and people will want to take half measures. They'll want to make excuses. People do not want to change. Even people who say they want to change don't really want to change. People who are not people want the results of change. And people who aren't desperately willing to do whatever it takes to achieve significant physical goals will not achieve those goals. If you don't have a desperation mindset, you will not do it. It's very hard. If your goal is to lose 10 pounds, you could do that with relatively little willpower. Many people do this, but you will probably gain back those 10 pounds within the next year or two, or probably within the next 3 months. And if your goal is actually to transform your body and achieve the kind of lasting health that produces longevity of life and increased quality of life, and that should be your goal, especially if you are obese or skinny fat or underweight, then that requires a radical dedication that only comes from desperation. People who have achieved impressive physical transformation understand this. People who haven't simply won't. 13. Many obese people do successfully change their weight for life. So the New York Times recently published a piece kind of debunking this notion that 95% of people who lose significant fat they just regain it within a year, so what's the point? So no, that's actually statistically false. It's kind of a made-up number, and doctors kind of laugh at it now, right? That number basically came from nowhere. It simply isn't true. In fact, most people who lose a significant amount of weight do keep most of it off. The facts should prompt an optimism toward the possibility of obese people to lose fat. The 95% number can refortify this notion that fat loss, especially lasting fat loss, is impossible. It isn't. It simply comes down to whether or not you want to lose the weight and keep it off. Many people make radical, lasting life changes that increases their quality and longevity of life. So, in conclusion, if you're obese, listen, I only have one piece of advice for you. If you're still watching this video, power to you. Power to you, okay? This is my only piece of advice for obese people. Hit rock bottom as soon as possible. The longer you wait for rock bottom, the worse rock bottom is going to be. If you hit rock bottom today, rock bottom will look like feeling terrible and hating yourself. And you might even cry. It's going to suck, right? It's going to suck. It's going to feel really bad. You're not going to want to feel that way. And you know what? That's okay. It's better than waiting 5 years and your rock bottom is a cancer diagnosis, right? The rates of cancer diagnosis are much higher among people who are obese. Don't wait so long to change that whatever, your rock bottom is actually fatal, okay? Don't wait so long to change that your rock bottom is a heart attack. Don't wait so long to change that your rock bottom is an incurable disease or diabetes or kidney cancer, okay? Don't jack up your body on a wing and a prayer that you'll be okay and that you're just riding on your genetics into the end of your life. And even if you were to live as long as, another person who's in good shape, your quality of life won't be as high. You won't be okay. Be the guy who beats the odds. Be the guy who overcame obesity. Be the ripped dude who's obsessed with fitness. People say, oh man, he's crazy. He's psycho. You know what? I might be psycho, but I'm alive and I'm able and I'm fit and I love it. Because be the guy who survived and became fit because he had to become obsessed with fitness to survive, to live, to enjoy life. Maybe for the first time in decades. Don't wait for the diagnosis. Don't wait for the call from the doctor. Hit rock bottom today. Step on the scale today. Make the change. Listen, if you're looking for something practical, you can check out another website that I run called TheoFit. And you can visit a website. It's how you would go to like google.com. Well, this website is just theo.fit, THEO.fit. TheoFit, okay? I created something called the Core Series. My purpose in creating Core Series was to help people who didn't know anything about fitness to transform their lives, okay? I'm not doing an ad. This is all free, 100% free, okay? I'm not selling anything, nothing like that. Google ranked my Core Series, particularly it's called a beginning, what is it called? A workout routine, a gym routine for beginners, okay? And it's got all the workouts. It's got videos for every single workout to show you how to do it. It's got a workout plan. It's got a downloadable workout sheet that you can do. I even explain in the Core Series how to diet the exact right way. There's a lot of diet myths out there. I explain it's actually very simple how to lose fat as quickly as possible and as sustainably as possible with the right dietary principles, okay? Google ranked the Core Series, its number one choice for a gym routine in 2018. Literally tens of thousands of people use Core Series every single month to transform their bodies. Don't wait for a diagnosis. Hit rock bottom today. Go to TheoFit or go somewhere else. Go to bodybuilding.com. I think they charge a fee now. Go to muscleforlife.com. You don't have to use my stuff. There are a lot of stuff in the resources. Go to Mike Matthews, muscleforlife.com. Go to bodybuilding. There's a great plan by a guy named Craig Capurso, who's a Christian, on bodybuilding.com called it's called 30 Days Out, and that's a great program. It doesn't go super detailed into exactly what your diet should be in terms of calories, and I think you need to take calories into account, especially when you're losing fat. But those are really good programs. Mike Matthews does talk a lot about calories, so that's a very good program. He has a book called Bigger, Leaner, Stronger, which is a good informational read, but it doesn't really have a prescriptive program delineated in that book. I think maybe the new edition does. I'm not sure. But anyway, I'm just talking pragmatically here just for your sake. If you're thinking, okay, great, Paul, what do I do? Listen, this is what you can do. I put TheoFit together because as I was going through seminary, I had a lot of guys who were obese and they were training to be pastors, and they said, Paul, I really need help. I've got 3 kids. I'm working 2 jobs. I'm in school. What do I do? How do I get in shape? And I was happy to help them, but I was kind of tired of programming the same program just a little bit different for every single guy. So Core Series is intended really I made it for pastors, but it works for anybody, to go from 0 to 1, so to go from a place where you feel helpless to go to a place where it's the program I had to come up with for myself when I didn't know anything about fitness, or when I didn't know anything about fat loss rather, to go from 60 pounds overweight, and I lost all that 60 pounds and became the most shredded I've been in my entire life in the course of 3 months, and I've kept it off. It's been 2 years, and I love my body. So those are the principles I've used. You can check that out. Again, that's at theo.fit. But again, you can use anything, okay? Use anything to start living your healthier life because it's worth it. And I listen, hit rock bottom today and make a change. Your family will thank you for it. Okay, your church will thank you for it. Your community will benefit from it. The people in your life will benefit from it. And most of all, you will live a happier life. You will be satisfied. This won't be hanging over your head. It won't be a shame hanging over your head. You don't have to feel this way. You don't have to live this way. Hit rock bottom today. Don't take half measures. Take full measures. Buy all in. Drink the Kool-Aid of fitness. You can become healthy. You can become strong. You can become lean. Nobody is beyond this. Nobody is beyond this, but you must start today. Start right now. Pick a plan. Execute that plan. Stay consistent. Don't quit after 2 days. Don't say, I'm going to modify it to make it easier. No. Do the plan. Stick to it. 12 weeks, 6 months, whatever it is. Make a commitment. Stick to that commitment. You can do it. Don't buy the lie that, I can't lose weight. People who lose weight always gain it back. No. You can make the change. People make the change and they stick to that change. You can do it. Hit rock bottom today. Face the ugly feelings. Make a change. That's how Christians should talk about obesity.